It's great to have you with me again today. Many people wait until they finally feel strong enough, brave enough, or ready enough, but you don't become strong first and then make the decision. You become strong after you've made it. You see the path, you see your destination, and the moment that inner back and forth comes to an end, your strength returns. No one waits, neither do I. Some people never learned how to wait, not because they're impatient, but because at some point they stopped believing that someone would come. Maybe this pattern influences many of the decisions we make, decisions that follow us throughout our lives. You can often see it in the way we work and in the way we handle relationships. And yes, sometimes we find it difficult to ask for support. We would rather just do everything ourselves and get it done quickly. Of course, that also means we can achieve a lot very quickly, but when you take a closer look, you begin to see a pattern. And at some point, if you're willing to really look at it, you might realize that perhaps this pattern wasn't the right one after all. You often see it in people who don't like asking too many questions or talking for too long. They simply take care of things, they take responsibility and get started. And of course, that often looks like strength. The mindset is rely on yourself, do it alone, and do it quickly. I know these patterns. I've known them since I was a child. I remember coming home with the key around my neck, standing alone in front of the door, an empty apartment. There was no one there to welcome you home and ask, "How are you? How was your day?" You were on your own. You made yourself something to eat, threw your school bag into the corner, and got on with your day. And you never stopped to think that maybe there was another way, that maybe another world existed. When that's the only world you know, you learn that you simply have to function. Everything has its structure, everything has its order. And I never asked myself, is someone coming? Should someone be here? I knew no one was coming. I was on my own. And of course, that is something you learn. At the time, it was also helpful. It made us independent and it gave us a sense of security. It was completely normal. Everyday life had a clear structure. Come home from school, do your homework. Then, most of the time, go outside and meet your friends, but only after you had finished what needed to be done. You had to ask yourself whether what you were doing would have consequences. That was life. Even around the dinner table, we didn't really talk about how we felt. The main phrase was always, "You have to," not "you can." You have to do this, you have to finish that, this still needs to be done, or simply don't make such a fuss, just do it, don't question it. There was a very clear structure that had to be followed so that all the siblings and our parents were, so to speak, rowing in the same boat, making sure everything got done. Our parents worked, and there simply wasn't much opportunity to take care of every individual child. So you had to take care of yourself. And you had to find your own way of dealing with your emotions. Our parents were shaped by their own experiences too. They simply passed on what they themselves had learned from their parents. And that emotional world was quite cold. It was very limited. And I don't blame anyone for that. We simply didn't know another world. That world was my world. And I'm sure it was the world of many other people from that generation. And at some point, those experiences became habits. And those habits eventually became rules. And you realize, don't wait, do it yourself and don't ask. And yes, that shaped me and probably many of us. Perhaps many people recognize this pattern in entrepreneurs. These are often people who can build companies, carry families, and solve crises. But they find it incredibly difficult to say, "I need you, I need all of you, and I need support." It's difficult because they simply don't know how. Throughout their lives, they have always relied on themselves, and they rarely experience what it feels like to let go and allow someone else to support them. I know that. And it's not necessarily only about success, it's about getting things done in your own way according to the rules you've always known. And sometimes that can be perceived as very dominant or even aggressive, but that's not necessarily what it is. When you recognize the pattern, you begin to understand that I, and probably many people from my generation, grew up this way. We learn to rely on ourselves, and that's something you first have to understand. You have to allow yourself to change your perspective. You have to look at things differently. And perhaps what we consider a strength isn't always just a strength. Sometimes we confuse what we repeatedly do with who we actually are. And for me, that is one of the most important things to understand. Because who do you actually want to be? Maybe the first step is simply to ask yourself, who am I? How do I react to certain things? And how can I recognize these patterns? Why am I the way I am? You are not a pattern, you have one. And decoding that pattern is incredibly fascinating. Suddenly, you begin to see the world differently. You begin to see people differently, and you begin to understand why someone behaves the way they do, or why children sometimes behave in certain ways. You see that they are caught in a particular pattern, and sometimes they need support to find their way out of it. Recognizing that can help you move forward again. It can help you open yourself up and let go. You are not a pattern, you have one. And that is exactly why you can change it. All the best.